We're covering section 5.2, and in this section we're writing linear equations. Anytime you are asked to write linear equations, you will always start out with y equals mx plus b. So therefore your goal will be to take what is given and find the slope and the y-intercept. Now, there will be several ways to find both the slope and several ways to find the y-intercept, depending on the type of information you're given. For example, let's say you're given simply the graph of a line. Well, the y-intercept is very obvious. You would find where it hits the y-axis. Since it hits at 3, our b would be equal to 3. And then if you were given a line this way, to find the slope, you would use rise over run. So you would have to identify 2 points that hit at a corner. We already found the y-intercept. It appears that we hit evenly on a corner of a square here. So the rise going from one point to another is actually a negative value. And you can see it's negative 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And the run appears to be 1, 2, 3, 4. Therefore, the slope is equal to negative 5/4. Given that information, we can substitute this into the equation. And there would be our equation. Before we continue, you should be aware that there are really only 3 ways to find slope. Number 1, as you can see in your homework assignment from 5.2, they will just give it to you. M equals, for example, in problems 1 through 14 here. A second way that they will give it to you is with 2 points, like in problems 39 through 49 odd. So if they give you 2 points to find the slope, you would subtract the y's over subtract the x's. The third way they would give you slope is as it was shown to you in the earlier example, on a graph. And again, to find slope there, it's rise over run. Now, with y-intercept, there are basically 3 ways that you can get the y-intercept as well. Number 1, they could just tell you, or it could be given, what the y-intercept was. Number 2, they could give you a graph, as you see right before you, and you can see that you could read it right off the y-axis. Now, another thing I want you to realize is that y-intercept is a very special point. The y-intercept of 3 is really the point 0 for x, 3 for y. So you could also be given the point 0 and then the y-intercept, like 0, 3 in our example here. The hardest problem would be when you're simply given 2 points like this, and you would then have to find the slope by subtracting the y's over the x's, and then you would have to use one of the points to find the y-intercept. And that would probably be the most difficult. So let's move on and work one of those problems. Let's write the equation of the line that contains the points 1, negative 5, and negative 2, 16. Again, we're going to use y equals mx plus b, therefore we have to find the slope and the y-intercept. To find slope, we subtract the y's over the x's. So therefore I would do 16 minus a negative 5, which would make it back to plus, over subtract the x's. Negative 2 minus 1. Notice, negative 2 minus 1. Notice since I started with the 16 on the y's, I have to start with the negative 2 on the x's. This gives us 21 over negative 3, or negative 7. Again, to find the y-intercept, either we have to find it on a graph, or it has to be a special point, 0, and then the y-intercept, or if they just give us another point, we have to use the slope in y equals mx plus b, and one of these points to find out what the b is. So I would substitute, probably using the smallest point, where the first is x, the second is y. So therefore, I'm going to substitute in for x, the 1. I'm going to substitute in for the y, the negative 5. Now, the reason I did that is because now I just have the variable b left. So I can solve for that. So this would give me negative 7 times 1 is negative 7. Of course, I still have negative 5 over here. And now I would just add 7 to both sides and end up with b equals 2. So, now I have enough information to write the equation. We found that the slope is equal to negative 7. The b, or y-intercept, is equal to 2. Therefore, the equation would be y equals negative 7x plus 2. From your homework, take a look at problem number 41, the point negative 4, negative 3, and 5, 3. This has a fractional slope, so I thought it would be helpful if I worked this problem. So let's take a look at that. There's our 2 points. We need to find the slope. So once again, we will subtract the y's over subtract the x's. I like to start with the bigger y, which would be 3. So 3 minus a negative 3. 3 minus a negative 3 becomes plus. 5 minus a negative 4 becomes plus. Therefore, we get 6/9, which reduces to 2/3 when you divide the top and bottom by 3. So we have a fractional slope. Well, that just requires a little bit more work. We'll still use y equals mx plus b. We will substitute 2/3 in for the m. For the x, we're going to substitute one of these x values. I don't like to deal with negatives, so I'll choose the positive. That's for the x. And then we have the plus b. We will use 3 for the y value. Now, again, that's a mess, and you probably don't like dealing with fractions. So I would suggest the first thing you do is clear the fractions. And because there's a 3 in the denominator, the easiest way is to multiply everything by 3. That will clear the denominator. Again, when you multiply a whole number times a fraction, that whole number is really over 1, so it multiplies times the top. In other words, it looks like this, even though I don't usually put the 3 over 1. These cancel or clear the fraction. And we also have to multiply the b by 3. So once I simplify that and multiply everything out, I would have 9 equals, these cleared, so we are left with 2 times 5 or 10, plus, I'm going to write the 3 in front of the b. That's the normal way whenever you have a variable like b. And now it's relatively easy. We would subtract 10 from both sides, which would just cancel this and give us a negative 1 on this side. And with negative 1 equals 3b, we just divide both sides by 3 and find that b is equal to negative 1/3. Therefore, we have the slope of 2/3. We have the b, negative 1/3. So the equation is y equals mx plus b, but you would not put a plus because it's negative 1/3, which means subtract 1/3. So there's problem 41. With that, I think you can handle most all the problems in that section. Good luck.